Welcome to Unswaddled, the Nurture by Naps podcast, hosted by real moms and real nurses, offering up honest and uncensored pregnancy and parenting advice. And now your hosts, the co-founders of Naps and Nurture by Naps, board-certified lactation consultants, and mothers to a small girl gang, Emily Silver, a family nurse practitioner, and Jamie O'Day, a registered nurse.
Hi, everybody. It's Jamie and Emily from Naps, and we are excited for this to be our first episode, even though we've recorded like 3 first episodes.
I think this is going to be it, guys. This is going to be the official first episode.
So
1 million.
Yeah. So if you're tuning in and this is your first time sort of meeting us or hearing us talk, I am Jamie O'Day. I'm a registered nurse. I'm a board certified lactation consultant. I live in South Boston with my husband and my 3 kids, 3 girls that are 6, 4, and 2, which is crazy. And Emily and I are the founders of Naps. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I am Emily Silver. I am a family nurse practitioner and a board certified lactation consultant. Although my wheelhouse really is just moms and babies. Yeah. Family NP is quite diverse. Yeah. Don't show me a skin rash. So I do moms and babies. And I also am a mom. My girls are 5 and 3.5. Yeah, I'm like literally going to cry. They're getting so big. And I live in Charlestown with my husband, my girls, and my big fat lazy yellow lab dog. What else? I don't know.
So we originally were going to, as the first episode, like introduce you to us and tell you a little bit about our backstory, and then realize that especially if this is your first time sort of listening to us, that you could probably give a shit about our backstory and just want like the information that's actually going to fucking help you as a parent.
Yeah. We won't waste your time today. We're going to get right to it and give you a valuable takeaway that you can actually do and use.
Yeah. So we have decided to start with a topic that comes up frequently in everything that we do, whether that's lactation visits or even prenatal classes. This topic comes up often, a ton in our online membership, Nurture by Naps
guide groups. It's everywhere.
So that topic is sleep and how to start getting longer stretches of sleep with your newborn. And there's 4 things that Emily and I talk about, 4 strategies that we talk about with parents, and we sort of talk about it in a progressive order. And so today we're actually just going to talk about the number one thing that we talk to families about first as it relates to getting longer stretches of sleep at night. And that strategy,
we're going to blow your mind though. Hold on a second. It's friggin' remarkable.
That strategy is to actually do nothing. Like just stop doing all the things at night when you think that your baby is awake or uncomfortable or needs to eat. Now, what do I actually mean by do nothing? So I want to start with when you can actually start doing nothing, right? And I think the first place to start is the standard of care here in the US is that pediatricians are looking for babies to regain their birth weight by 2 weeks of age. So what that means is your baby's born, at their birth weight. For breastfeeding babies, it is normal to lose some weight. And in fact, babies can lose up to about 10 to 12% of their birth weight. That's actually losing that much percentage of their weight can be normal. And then babies get 2 whole weeks to regain their birth weight. So get back to their birth weight. And so once babies have regained their birth weight, most healthcare professionals will agree that at that point at night, if you're setting an alarm to wake your baby up to feed them because you needed to, or because somebody told you to, you can actually stop doing that. And you can allow your baby to sleep as long as they want at night. So that's sort of like place number 1 to start is once your baby has regained their birth weight, you can actually allow them to be the alarm clock overnight for them to let you know that they're awake and it's time to feed, and you feed them versus you proactively setting an alarm.
I mean, when you said like all the things, I feel like for those of you listening that are home with a newborn, you're living the chaoticness of the night, right? Which is like, maybe you set an alarm, maybe you didn't, your baby's up crying. Then you like flip on the, light at your nightstand and you jostle your partner. If you're like me, like a deep elbow to the rib cage, like, did you hear that the baby's awake? And then now you're like fumbling and the light's on, and then you unswaddle the baby. The Velcro's like so loud, and now you're like breastfeeding or you're preparing a bottle. Then you got a diaper. These are like all the things.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they pee, then they poop, then an hour goes by and you're trying to get them back down. And there's like a million things happening overnight.
Right. And by the time you get them back to sleep, you might only be getting like a half hour of sleep before it's time to feed them again.
And if you're a clock counter like me, I used to watch the clock and be like, oh my gosh, this is 60 minutes, 30 minutes. I would do a feed again.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that in another episode.
Yeah, that's a whole other episode.
So the nights may be challenging right now because your baby may be waking up a lot, because you may be doing all of the things, like Emily just described. And so once your baby has regained their birth weight and you're not setting an alarm anymore to wake them up to feed overnight, now we want you to start doing nothing, right? We want you to start doing less. And what that means is, when number one thing, if you're going to take away anything from this episode, take away this: if your baby's eyes are closed, they are asleep. So it does not matter how much they're grunting, how much they're kicking, how much they're pushing, how much they're, throwing their legs up in the air. Maybe they're even crying from time to time, but their eyes are closed. If their eyes are closed, they are asleep. So if their eyes are closed, you're doing nothing. And this is really challenging. I love the way that you describe like our thought process. I
just have to like get in your head a little bit, right? Yeah. I feel like babies are super loud at night. Yep. I don't know why, like they're quiet all day long and then they're really, really noisy overnight. My first was especially. And I've been there where it's like 1 a.m. and the baby's making noises. There's so many scenarios, right? Like there's a scenario where the baby's making noises and you're so asleep that you just roll over and pick them up and just start feeding them because you didn't even realize that you were doing it and you heard them and you picked them up. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I'm feeding my baby right now.
Yeah. Like stimulus response.
Right. Or it's like 1 a.m. and this happens to my moms and my MSGs all the time. Their baby's like, like grunting and making noises and they're not awake, but now the mom, and I've done this too, has made up the story in her head that her baby's like really gassy and uncomfortable and oh my gosh, must be in so much pain. And what kind of quality sleep could this be? And now you're burping them and you unswaddle them and you're bicycling their legs in the middle of the night and doing some baby massage. And it's like, whoa, that shit's like not sustainable. Right.
You also, in that scenario where they were asleep, right? And they were kicking them up. Now you've woken them up from a deep sleep, right? So that's actually a scenario where babies will be really hard to get back to sleep. It's like if somebody wakes you up from a deep sleep, it's always a lot harder to fall back to sleep than if you're naturally waking up. So that's a scenario where like maybe you woke your baby up and you're like, it doesn't make sense. Like it's taking me an hour and a half to get them back to sleep.
They didn't even want to wake up. Right.
They were actually in a deep sleep.
Or like I was the worst culprit of I would wake up and hear the girls making noises. And I knew right from this, like do nothing, like they're not really awake. But then I was like, well, screw this. Like I'm awake.
Yep.
And I'm just going to feed them now, get them up and feed them because I don't want to fall back asleep and in 30 minutes or an hour be woken up again.
Yep.
Everybody's played that game.
Yeah. I used to do it with my girls all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm awake. I'm trying to fall back to sleep. I can't fall back to sleep. Fuck it. I'm just going to wake up and feed them. And again, in that scenario, you might be waking up. There's usually two things that happen in that scenario, right? Where you might be waking up your baby from a deep sleep. And so they might be really hard to get back down, or you might be kind of like trying to wake them up for a deep sleep and they're not really awake or ready to be awake. And so they have a crappy feed and they're up an hour later anyway. And you're like, what the heck? Like I just fed them an hour ago.
Right.
So as much as you can, try and actually let your baby wake up, eyes open, let out a cry. I am not talking about, newborns, babies in the first 3 months, like crying for, several minutes, 10 minutes, 20. We're not talking about crying it out. I'm truly just mean eyes are open. They let out a cry to indicate to you that they're awake or they're probably
honestly awake. Like before you even look to see if their eyes are open, just like pause in your bed.
Yep.
This is like the do nothing piece too. Like pause in your bed and just breathe for like a couple minutes, right? 3 to 5 minutes actually feels like an eternity when you're like waiting, just wait up to 5 minutes and say like, does the baby actually really need me? Or am I jumping at the initial noise?
Yeah.
And then like the eye thing. I know the number one question you get is, but Jamie, I think their eyes are shut, but they're crying. They just sound really uncomfortable.
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
I used to do this to you, but Jamie, she really is loud.
Yeah. Or she's really loud or she's crying. And or people will say to me like, but she's crying. So her eyes are shut because she's crying so hard. And it's like, well, no, like if you watch, like they don't cry with their eyes closed constantly, right? Like they'll open their eyes. I mean, we've had some babies where the baby will cry for truly like be crying in their sleep for 8 or 10 minutes, but they're actually asleep and they fall back to sleep.
Well, think about how many times we wake up in the middle of the night.
Right.
I mean, aside from my kids waking me up in the middle of the night, I wake up because like my husband turned the heat down too low and I'm cold and I got to pull up another blanket, or I fell asleep on my arm and I can't feel it. I got to roll over. We wake up all the time in the middle of the night, but we can just put ourselves right back to sleep.
Right.
They don't blissfully sleep in this like deep, quiet slumber for 12 hours.
Right.
They make noises in their sleep.
Right.
Even toddlers go on to do it, yelling out a little bit, crying out a little bit. They put themselves back to sleep.
Yeah. So I really want you to think about if maybe you're falling victim to some of these things that we're talking about. Like, is your baby actually awake? I hope that there are some of you listening to this like, like I totally am just responding to my baby making a lot of noise, or I made up the story that they're uncomfortable.
Maybe you don't even know and you're listening. Like the challenge flag for you is like the next couple nights, just look at your baby in the bassinet or the crib before you intervene.
And remember, you guys, we're not talking about a long period of time here, meaning like if your baby stays asleep for an extra 10 minutes from what you were getting before, an extra 10 minutes every night over the course of a week, you're talking about getting an extra 45 minutes or hour of sleep. And that is significant for you right now. That is significant for a new parent to be getting an extra hour. Now, all of a sudden you can build on that, right? So the first place that we want you to start is just doing nothing. Like actually just don't do anything at all until your baby is actually awake. And then once your baby is awake, there are these sort of like 3 other strategies that we talk about to try and elongate their sleep. We'll skip over those 3 strategies for now and just jump into this other point that Emily brought up at the beginning about doing all the things, right? Mm-hmm. Once you've decided that your baby is awake and it is time to feed them, really try and cut down on the stimulation that you're providing them overnight.
Right.
So like, if you need to turn a light on, then have it be like a night light or a light that you have control over how bright or dim it is, and have it be a nice dim light. If you do need to change their diaper, and Emily and I are huge advocates of only changing babies' diapers overnight if they have peed through their diaper, right? Which, newborns obviously are peeing a lot. Or if you know for a fact they have a poop, like you can smell it, or while you were feeding them, they've pooped. If you need to change a diaper though, we highly recommend changing their diaper at the beginning of the feed or middle of the feed. Again, whether you're breastfeeding or bottle feeding, knowing that unswaddling them and changing their diaper is stimulation, and that's going to wake them up more. And so if you can do it at the beginning or the middle of a feed, middle of the feed, if they're like poop while you're feeding them, right? Then wait for them to be done pooping and then change their diaper and finish up the feed. With the goal being that by the end of the feed, lights were low or off, minimal interaction in terms of like talking or making eye contact, and minimal stimulation in terms of like unswaddling and diapering, with the goal being that at the end, by the time you're going to put them back down, when you're finishing up the feed, they're in that clean diaper and they're swaddled back up and they're ready to be put right back down.
Right.
So those are just some strategies that you can think about in terms of, one, just trying to get longer stretches of sleep at night by doing nothing, by waiting for your baby to actually be awake and going by their cues. And then also making the time that you're both actually awake at night, hopefully a little bit less, sort of like, I think about it as like streamlining the process. Like, how can we streamline it? Right?
I mean, to clarify the streamlining, this is quite opposite of what we would teach to parents in the hospital right away, right? Like, for those of you listening that have a brand new newborn, you're like in the first 4 to 6 weeks home, you are doing all the things. Like you are turning the light on, you are unswaddling them, you are changing their diaper because you're like figuring it out. You're trying to get them to regain their weight. I know that some of you are listening with these newborns that are so sleepy and you like have to stimulate them, have to get them up.
Yep.
We're just trying to move y'all forward.
Yep.
When we're now like past 4 to 6 weeks out, you can segue into this place of like doing less things.
Yeah. that's also just such a good reminder that even if you're further than 4 to 6 weeks out
and you haven't done it yet,
you're fine. Like everything's fine. It's not too late to start this process in terms of, working on getting those longer stretches. Emily and I like talk about it all the time. Like you really can't screw up your baby, especially those first few weeks and months, like really beyond that, right?
Literally, not anything. We're sitting here telling you to do nothing.
Yeah. Like
just do nothing.
Right. Like truly you really can't screw up your baby. So don't feel like you've done anything wrong. Don't feel like you're screwing up. The point of this is to just give you like some quick, easy, accessible like strategies and tips to start making the overnights a little bit better for you. And once the overnights start to get a little bit better, you guys, like that's when everything else starts to feel a little bit better and easier from a physical place, from a mental health place. So that's why we thought with this first episode, let's just talk about sleep.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how to get longer stretches. It's like the best bang for your buck in terms of your physical and mental health. And then we'll build on that. We'll build on all of those things as we talk more.
Yeah. Start here. Challenge accepted.
Yep.
Do nothing for a few nights.
Yep.
And let us know.
Yeah. Drop us a line anytime. Let us know. Instagram, email. We want to hear from you guys. And if you have any questions for us or you want to talk through your specific scenario, if you don't know this already, Emily and I are pretty accessible. So reach out anytime and we're happy to talk through any unique scenarios. But start here and tune back in. And we can't wait to hear from you guys on how doing nothing is going.
Yep.
We'll talk to you soon.
If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, check out our other virtual and in-person offerings. For more information, meet us over at nurturebynaps.com and on Instagram and Facebook, where our handle is Nurture by Naps. We can't wait to see you there.